All right, we are here. I know, super excited. This morning has this is like a dream come true. Aaron and I have known each other for a lot of years. I have hired him outside of real estate transactions for appraisal stuff, and he's been a great resource for questions. And so when I was crafting kind of a summer speaking series about what can we bring to the market that is relevant right now, and I know you guys don't want to hear me all the time, I'm like, okay, he's at the top of my list because he is a wealth of information. And so we talked about what we were going to discuss today that would help you guys with this shifting market. And at the end of the day, we all know that us getting CMAs right is one of the first things that we need to do to make sure that sales go through and are smooth. So he's going to speak to that. And then, you know, I'm sure he gets tired of the whole question about how do you do a reconsideration of value, but we all need to know it. We need to know from their perspective, how can we do it respectfully? How can we do it appropriately to make sure that when we get into a situation where we truly believe that there was a mistake made, we can maybe get that corrected. And so I'm excited to have Aaron share. We're going to have him do a brief presentation, and then he really wanted to open it up to Q&A. So we hope that you guys are going to be interactive, have your questions ready, because that's what's most exciting for us as presenters, is to have that interaction and to know that we're connecting and we're making a difference in what we say. So without further ado, Mr. Aaron Chonka is here for appraisal class.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Christy. I appreciate it. Before I get started, I did want to just share some of my information here with everybody in Zoom, and then also here in the office. Again, as Christy had kind of mentioned, one of my main drivers and focus in terms of doing this is to kind of bridge the gap between appraisers and agents, and really play my role as being a resource for you folks. So I've got my contact information up here on the screen. Hopefully you can see that from the screen share. And then please feel free to reach out to me anytime. It's kind of an open offer. If you have any appraisal related questions, or just kind of need some interpretation on perhaps an appraisal issue that you're going through, you've got another appraiser's report in front of you, but don't quite understand some of the rationale or reasoning behind things, please feel free to reach out to me. Best way to reach me is on my mobile phone, and you can give me a call or text me and give me your question. We can maybe even set up a time just to call and discuss and answer those questions for you. Also, I do have a private Facebook group that I've established for agents in the area. So that's another way you can reach out to me. So let me see if I can get that information for you here. Let's see.
Email it out after.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome.
So the name of that Facebook group is Your Appraiser Resource, helping Phoenix area real estate professionals. So you can connect with me on Facebook, and I can send you a request to join, or you can put in a request to join. Again, that's for agents and homeowners here in the area that just have general real estate appraisal questions.
Is it Your Appraisal Resource?
Yeah, Your Appraiser Resource.
There's Agents Appraisal Resource. Let me see, maybe. So do I need to put your name in it?
You know, I don't think so, but you might want to give that a try. Look up my name. Again, it's Aaron Chonka. That's AARONCHONKA. All right. And then let's do slideshow here. Oops, no, that's not it.
You're on it, I think so.
I am. Okay.
Yeah, so you
Okay.
should be able to forward.
Perfect.
There's you.
So what I wanted to just kind of do to start the discussion today is just talk about some of the changes in the housing market that we've been dealing with. And it's kind of funny, this meme that another fellow appraiser had posted, a buddy of mine in Sacramento. You've maybe heard of him, Ryan. Oh, I'm blanking on the last name here. Oops. How do I pull up that screen transition here? Sorry.
It's okay. Should be able to just pull.
Oh, you'd be able to
Oh, okay. Hold on just a second. You're right. let me stop this and start it again, because I
Okay.
don't know what's going on. It's all the fun. We are. So let's try that and let's put it on preview mode. Let's see if that works. There we
Perfect.
go.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is again, just a slide of the private Facebook group, your appraisal resource, helping Phoenix area real estate professionals. We can connect that way. So I try to answer that daily. If you have any appraisal related questions, connect with me on Facebook. And then just kind of getting into now, just what we're seeing with regard to the housing market, especially over the last 12 months. Yeah. Like, what did it feel like for you guys? I mean, it certainly felt like this for me, looking back at the fall. I mean, completely anemic, powerless market, just kind of so blah, dead, right? And then all of a sudden, November, December, things just really snap back. And, it's spring of 2023. It's not anything like what we experienced in 2020 or 2021, but it feels a heck of a lot stronger than it did just a few months ago. So I thought this was a great illustration of just how things feel today. And it also helps us to appreciate why we really need to be tracking market trends. And I want to connect this with how when might be running into an appraisal gap issue, where you can find in the appraisal a better understanding of the appraiser's view of the market and make sure that they are also in tune with how quickly things have changed. So I want to highlight a few points in our market, and then we'll also go into the appraisal form. And so this will be a specific way that you can address appraisal gap issues. And if you're going through the reconsideration of value process, you know where to go into the appraisal to look and read the appraisal to make sure that the appraiser has a good understanding of market changes.
Nice.
So this is a snapshot from the Crawford Market Index. Again, really illustrating how things have changed. When we were looking at October of last year, virtually all markets were falling with regard to the market index. Now, just this last week, May 12th, everything on the upswing.
So everywhere.
Totally different, just about everywhere, right? Yep. So yeah, from buyer's market to seller's market. Now, one of the ways that as appraisers we track this is through the 1004 MC form, which it's the market conditions addendum in the appraisal. And this is just a little snapshot of this is an actual appraisal that I did and did some analysis on changing the median price change over different periods of time. And so I think it's helpful to get familiar with this particular form if the appraiser has included it. It used to be that this was mandatory in all appraisals. A lot of the VA, FHA, Fannie Mae, they've said this no longer needs to be in, but
Hey,
I still
Aaron,
find it to be useful. Yes.
sorry to interrupt. If you're switching slides, I think we're still stuck on slide 3,
On 3, okay.
but with the men's bodies.
I mean, come on, as far as where to get stuck, not too bad,
I'm not
right?
complaining.
All right, let's try this one more time. We're gonna.
Thank you for letting me know.
Oh, all the fun, all the fun. Let me shut down. Okay, we've only got one. I don't know why we've got 2 on here. That's why I'm confused. Let's try this. Can you guys see that okay? Okay, perfect.
Can we shift?
So
just
yeah,
the
we
back?
can.
Yeah.
We can go back to that one and then, yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So everybody see the Crawford Market Index shot there? Yeah, and then, so this is a screenshot of the market conditions addendum that I put together for a particular appraisal. This one is relatively close to the RE/MAX office here. I believe this was right around maybe like Union Hills and 20th Street area. Just kind of a relatively small single family home. But the reason why I want to point out the market conditions addendum is this is kind of a sampling of what you can expect to see in terms of the appraiser's analysis of market conditions. And it kind of breaks down the whole supply and demand factors here, things that we want to look at so that we can track those changes over time. Because if you are comparing properties that sold 12 months ago it's just, it's a different market. And so if you're not adjusting for those sales appropriately,
Yeah.
it could really skew the results of your appraisal. And so we want to make sure, as fellow real estate professionals, that the appraiser has not just looked at things maybe on a 12-month basis, because if you're looking at, we're still down overall. But if you start chopping that up in the last 6 months, last 3 months, we see these changes happening. And so you notice here in this particular slide, I've highlighted the housing supply, and give me your feedback, but does this not appear consistent with what we're seeing in terms of housing supply over this particular time period? Now, just for your information, this is an appraisal that I did in March. So things have accelerated even since then, but you can see how it would hold true if we're looking at that last section there in terms of housing supply at the bottom of the inventory analysis. The last 7 to 12 months is, pretty low, 2.8 months of supply of comparable sales. This is, in my comparable sales search, I'm looking at properties that would be relatively comparable. So I've trimmed it down even more so than just a zip code or a neighborhood. I'm looking at comps in a particular neighborhood, this kind of Paradise Valley Village neighborhood here, just so you have some context. But when you move forward from the 4 to 6 months period prior to the effective date of the appraisal, supply has increased, right? It was going up, and we saw that happening. We saw that build up over that time period. Then when you move farther to the right there, look at the housing supply, it trimmed back down. We see this lack of supply again, 1.6 months of supply in this particular neighborhood. And so notice the direct correlation there with the lower half of the section with median comparable sale price. We see peak prices from 7 to 12 months ago. That's consistent. Median price for a comparable property in this area is $550, a very dramatic stiff drop over the 6-month period that passed. But what do we see in that last 3 months? Markets, starting to swing back up. And if we were to do another one of these today, we would probably see even more dramatic shift upwards, just because of the lack of supply that we have. Some of the other things that are consistent with what we're seeing in the market here, even if you're looking at the sale to list price ratio, where 7 to 12 months ago, we were seeing prices mostly above list price, that started to drop over time. And so we see the reaction here with the market, where sellers are, of course, allowing prices below what their asking price is, and accepting what was up to this point when I was pulling my numbers. It's about 97% sale to list price ratio. That may, if we were to update that too may have changed. We might see that ticking back up as we see kind of a shortage of supply. So this is just to kind of get you familiar with this market conditions addendum, and to look to see the data that the appraiser has pulled to see if it's consistent with what you are also seeing in the market.
If they don't provide that, are we able to request it, or is that just going to be something they're going to be annoyed by?
Yeah. So one of the unfortunate things. So good question, Christy. If you couldn't hear that on Zoom, she was asking about, is this something that we can request from the appraiser? So these would fall under the category of results of the appraisal, which because of confidentiality reasons, the appraiser is not allowed to share the results of the appraisal with anyone other than the borrower. So if you're getting an opportunity if you have a copy of the appraisal report in hand, this is going to be the start of your reconsideration of value process. This is what I want you to look at as making sure that the appraiser is in tune with what market conditions are like. So if you have a familiarity with how to read this or what to look for in the appraisal, then you can base your argument for reconsideration off of, hey, I found some inconsistencies here.
Right. So
Yep.
I have a question. I'm
Yes.
curious. This was done in March.
Yep.
What was the contract price?
Oh, good question. I have a snapshot of the appraisal.
Oh.
I'll move forward to it so
Okay.
we can see how it actually looks like in the appraisal.
Yep. Okay.
So yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment. So
Okay.
we'll get an actual snapshot of the appraisal that I did here to show you how it affected the results of my appraisal.
Okay.
All right. So this is again some little bit more analysis that I did by just doing regression on median price change over the last 3 months. And we see again that as we've charted it, the upward trend. And based on my calculations, I'm able to support and prove a market conditions adjustment of 1.4% per month.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a big.
it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And think about, again, one of the downsides to comparison analysis is if we're too focused on it, it's almost like looking in the rearview mirror,
Yeah.
right? So even if you have a comparable sale that closed 3 months ago, I mean, that's fairly recent, but when did it go under contract,
Right.
right? It went under contract 4, maybe 5 months
Right.
ago.
Right.
So we're dealing with the meeting of the minds took place well before the effective date of the appraisal, and market conditions have continued to change.
Right.
That's why this type of analysis is really so important. And we want to be looking in the appraisal to see if the appraiser has really done their work. So in addition to that market conditions addendum or some sort of commentary in the appraisal, we want to see what the appraiser is, what are they really using as support for these market conditions adjustments. So let's move forward here. I'm using now a 12-month snapshot to show, again, a wider range. If we look at 12 months ago, what happened with prices, they were at their peak. And we noticed right around that, that 6-month mark, things starting to drop a little bit. And then looking at, if you trim it down to the last 3 months, that's where we're seeing that swing back upwards, following that trend line. But again, if we're using comps from 7, 8, 9 months ago, we're looking to it, not that you can't use that as a comp. It's just important to make those market condition adjustments so that we're bringing those sales up to today's prices.
So if the appraiser is using that, because I have that on a couple of my low appraisals, they
Yeah.
had pulled from 9, 12, and 14 months ago.
Yep.
And they did adjustments to that, but I couldn't
Good.
figure out, was it truly the right adjustment?
Right. Yeah. And so it's tough because it's going to depend on the data set that they used. But what we really want to know is, are the conclusions that they've come to well supported and reasonable? Is it in line with what we're seeing in the market? So sometimes we are forced as appraisers to use comps that are older because those are the best that are available. But if we're not adjusting appropriately for those change in market conditions, and I'll give you an example, if we were only to do an analysis of sale prices over the last 12 months and draw just kind of a straight line from 12 months ago to today, we would think, oh, we should be making declining price adjustments. That's why I like to chop it up into these quarterly segments so that we can see where and when it shifted. And so be looking for that in the appraisal, either some charts and graphs that the appraiser has concluded, the 1004 MC market conditions addendum, and then also reading through the market conditions commentary in the appraisal report to make sure that the appraiser is up on the latest trends. Yes,
Out of
Kristen.
curiosity, and I'm guessing some of this is just gut instinct for you, just like it is for us as you run more and more of these analysis.
Yep.
At what point do you decide that it's better to go 9 months back for a comp as opposed to adjusting some of the parameters to get one that may be sold sooner, but isn't maybe in the same neighborhood or whatever? What really becomes that tipping point to say older is actually better?
That is a great question. And I wish I had a really solid answer for you because it is a judgment call every single time I'm doing an appraisal. The thing that I would say, and I'll get into this also, we talked, your name again, I'm so sorry.
Dee Hagen.
Dee. Okay. So Dee and I were talking before the presentation started about seeing pending sales in the appraisal report. I like to include those because those are properties that went into contract within weeks of the effective date of the appraisal. So that tells me, it gives me an idea of where the market is today. Might be a few weeks ago, but it's better than 3, 4, 5 months ago when I'm looking in the rearview mirror. That's as close as we can get to what's happening today. And so I will show you in this presentation how we use those pending sales to also support those adjustments.
Mhm.
And so those pendings give me some indication, even if I am forced to use an old comp, 7 or 8 months old,
Yeah.
at least I can, using the pendings, I have some idea of how to adjust that so that it fits with today's,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and the truth is, I'm probably using a combination of comps that are available. So in other words, am I looking at maybe the last 3 months and putting a lot of weight on those? Yes. But do I have that model match that sold 7 or 8 months ago? It might be too good for me just to ignore,
Mhm.
but I include it and then make the appropriate adjustments for changing market conditions. Yeah. But it's, I mean, that's the, I like to try and break down appraisal as scientifically as I possibly can
Yeah.
and break things down from a mathematical standpoint.
Mhm.
But I will admit that is the art of appraisal that is subjective in terms of, you know, should I or shouldn't I kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, probably the tipping point for me is kind of going back to the principle of substitution, which says, you know, is this property, would it be considered as a purchase alternative to the subject, or would it be a suitable substitute? If the buyer couldn't buy this house, would they also consider this one? And when I have to answer yes, that's when I go, yeah, I need to use that as a comparable and make adjustments.
I want you with every appraisal. And that's a great way to.
Yeah.
And that's what we tried to do on that really low one,
Okay,
that substitute.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we still
yeah,
didn't win.
yeah. Principle of, keep in mind the principle of substitution. I also like to refer this as purchase alternative. Again, putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer. Would they consider this property a suitable alternative to if they couldn't buy the one that they're interested in, is the other one a suitable alternative to the subject?
Great.
Here is a snapshot of what I want you to be looking for in the neighborhood section of the typical URAR, the single family appraisal report. This is page 1, the neighborhood section. So right above this is all the subject information, address, location, etc. This is going to start to give you some insight onto how the appraiser is tracking the trends within the market area. And so go ahead, please.
Quick question.
Yes.
Appraisal regulations is it statewide or is it nationally?
So there are both, and there are different levels to
Okay.
that.
So what you're talking about today, totally the Tucson and Green Valley people, this is right on.
So yeah, kind of on a very high top level, I'm going to be discussing with you appraisal principles. So like when I talk about the principle of substitution, that is a governing not a guideline, but again, just a principle that all appraisers should be using to really appropriately use the sales comparison method. Yeah. So, and then like the appraisal form, that is a form that you're going to see used nationwide for anything involving any Fannie Mae, VA, or FHA.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
that those were part of that. Okay.
Yeah. So this is going to be very standardized so that virtually any appraisal report that you're looking at is going to be set up in a way that,
Beautiful.
yeah, so that you can take a look at this yourself. So this is, again, the neighborhood section on page 1 of the appraisal report. And looking there in the middle section, 1 unit housing trends that I've circled in red, you'll notice just the boxes here that are checked with regard to 1 unit housing trends. And so based on the analysis that I showed you, that I did for this particular property, you can see there that I've checked the boxes all on the left. And each section of the housing trends kind of correlates to one another, you'll notice. So an increasing market with a shortage of inventory and marketing time under 3 months, those correlate together. That makes sense. Now, what I want you to look at is, imagine now if the appraiser marked property values are declining and that there's an oversupply, but marketing time under 3 months. Then you start to see some areas, well, maybe the appraiser is not quite tuned in with what is going on. If he's marking declining, is the appraiser perhaps only analyzing prices on a 12-month basis, where again, as we said, we know the peak of the market was probably May of 2022, relative to May of 2023, yes, prices are lower, but it's not following that trend line quite close enough. So take a look. This is probably your first, just a quick at a glance view of an appraisal report, just to make sure that the appraiser is on the right track with regard to housing trends. So in this appraisal report, what I'm explaining to my client is that while things are down year over year, in the last 3 months, in this particular case, we saw a really aggressive snapback. So that's why I'm marking these latest trends as increasing property values, a shortage of supply, and marketing times under 3 months.
Especially that location,
Right.
especially that location.
Yes. Yeah. This is specific to what I've used as the defined neighborhood here. So again, this is the Paradise Valley Village area. So I'm kind of using a pretty large area. I've defined that and letting my client know I'm selecting comps from this particular geographic area. Yeah. So now we'll go into the sales comparison chart. And so this is again, step number 2 of what you want to do after you've identified what the appraiser is looking at in terms of housing trends. How is that translating into the actual appraisal, or what sort of adjustments should we be looking at? And so on the left here, we have the subject line, and you'll notice I've highlighted in there the date of sale / time with that red arrow pointing right to the comparable sales. So using that 1.4% per month adjustment, I'm making an adjustment for changes in market conditions, or colloquially, we call them time adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to use that terminology when you're talking to the appraiser. And so based on the calculations here, like if we're looking at comp 1 here, price is $455,900. In here on the date of sale, we have the settlement date, which is the closing date, which is March of 2023. The contract date of February 2023. Remember, we're looking, yeah. So when we're making adjustments for these time adjustments, we're starting with this contract date. So it's 1.4% per month from the contract date. And you see that's a positive adjustment of $6,400. Remember, I think I did this appraisal near the end of March. So it's roughly, 1 month I'm accounting for increase in value just for that change between the contract date to our effective date in the appraisal. So I had to use some older comps, go back a little bit farther in time. You'll notice comp 2 closed escrow in December, went under contract in November.
Yeah.
Yuck. But, because I have supportable adjustments, I can bring that price up. And based on the sale price of $530 and adding a 1.4% adjustment, we're looking at close to $30,000 adjustment. But that brings us in line with what's happening in the market.
So that's actually almost a better comp than the other 2. Is that what I'm looking at right now?
So I did rank the comps in order of best, not best to worst, but 1, 2, 3. Number 1 is going to be the best comp because for a couple of primary factors. One, it's very current, but if you were to look at this whole page on the comparison analysis, you would see that it required the least adjustment to compare. And so generally speaking, the comps that required the least gross adjustment, and you can look, if you were to look at this whole snapshot of the page, at the bottom of the adjusted value below that comparable, you would see percentage gross adjustment. So the comparables that have the least gross adjustment are generally considered the best comps. And you'll notice too, this one also is 0.07 miles. This is in the subdivision.
Yeah.
Another reason, it's recent, and it took the least amount of adjustment. That was what I considered comp 1 and put the most weight in the opinion of value on. But you can see the difference between comp 1 and comp 2, the difference between comp 2 and comp 3 with regard to these time adjustments that, a few months makes a big difference, especially when you're adding 1.4% per month, accounting for that change in market. So these are really critical. If if you're understanding the market is that prices are going up pretty significantly, but you're not seeing the appraiser making these adjustments, or you're seeing them make negative adjustments for a downward market, that can cause some appraisal gap issues. So that's why I'm kind of highlighting this as a key thing to look for with regard to making sure that the appraiser has a good understanding of current market conditions. Any other questions on this page here before I move forward?
So location, there's big adjustments on location. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, so good question. Just with regard to location, you'll notice there on the left, this is the subject property. This one back to Union Hills and power lines.
Wow.
You know, busy street and an eyesore.
Yeah.
It was,
Interesting.
yep, had to,
That means power lines and busy road.
correct.
Okay.
Yep, yep, had to do it. Yes, some pretty big adjustments, but that was based on the comps that I was finding. So what I'm doing here is I have one in the subdivision that also backs to, it's the same as the subject. It backs to the power lines and is a busy road. Another reason why this is a great comp. It's in the subdivision and has similar negative external influence. The other two are superior because those are interior lots with better location, and had to make adjustments for those. But I can support this adjustment by pairing these sales side by side. So I have one that represents something that's similar to the subject, and then two that are superior that I had to adjust downward, but I could do it because I'm pairing those sales against comps 2 and 3 to figure out an appropriate adjustment for location. Yeah. You'll also notice too here, this one had a larger lot than most of the lots in the subdivision, and I was able to support a site adjustment there for the lot size as well.
They're relatively close. We're not bumping into a whole nother bracket,
No,
but look at the difference in the values even.
yeah.
So
So
how
we'll move
much
on
do
to the
you-
next one here with regard to, these are pending sales that I used in the appraisal report, and just swapping back and forth, just to kind of give you a little bit of sense of why these were valuable to me is, especially looking at how prices shifted. We've got a sale price range of the comps between basically 456 all the way up to 530. We see the prices are still escalating because we have these pending sales at 535 and 549.9. So this is good evidence for me that prices are still moving upwards, which is why I've included them in the appraisal report. And this is probably the third thing that you're going to want to be looking for, is the appraiser using pending sales or properties that are under contract to support their adjustments for time. So again, these pending sales are the best representation of what today's market is like. They're within just a few weeks of the effective date of the appraisal.
And they went under contract relatively quick considering the average days of market.
Good point. Good point. Which, evidence of that it's probably one of two things, or probably both things, that the price and the condition were acceptable to the market, which is why they went under so fast. Those two things really added to, getting these properties sold. Yep.
That last comp is quite a bit higher on a price per square foot and a full price, which is interesting. So that leap.
Yep.
I wonder if it was newer.
These are both, I think these were in the same subdivision. You'll see
Oh.
the proximity,
yep,
0.1
yep.
miles and 0.06. These happen to be just kind of down the street.
One's like almost next door.
Yeah, they're super close, which was great. Doesn't always happen, but this one happened to work out really well. Yep. Let's see.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
If we ever have an issue with an appraisal, can we call you and you have a fee and you can help us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to do a little bit of coaching. This is kind of just a sample of how you might, and this is a sample of how you might address a reconsideration of value. This is just one aspect that I kind of coach on with regard to doing it. But yeah, if you would like a little bit of a one-on-one session and go over a little bit more in detail about some strategies that you can use to increase your chances of doing reconsideration of value, there's a lot more that I can help you with. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
I could have
absolutely.
used you 2 weeks ago. Twice.
But yeah, just in general, if you need some help, just kind of we get into a little bit of sticky territory when I'm actually doing an appraisal review. So if I'm doing a peer review of another appraiser's report, I have to actually keep records of all that stuff. But what I can do without kind of crossing that boundary as an official appraisal review is something more informal and just give you suggestions kind of on a broad general basis. Hey, this is what you might want to look at or what you might want to consider. And then, you can kind of add your analysis on top of that, but I can definitely provide you with some suggestions on how to increase your chances of getting a successful reconsideration. Yep, absolutely. Any
can
questions? Go ahead.
yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So, I may miss the part you said something about a property that's backed up to a road. How much do you adjust for that?
Very good question. And so if you didn't happen to hear that here in the classroom, the question basically is, what would be the adjustment for backing to the busy street? And unfortunately, there is no standardized adjustment. We have to support this and extract this from the market, which is why in the sales comparison is this what we call a paired sales analysis. And what I found was important for me to figure this out was I had to find another comp that had a similar negative external effect. Very fortunate to have one in the same subdivision, the back to the same streets, and the power lines as well. So what I'm doing in this particular case to adjust it appropriately is I'm pairing these other these superior location sales against comp number one. And so the way that we do that is we're looking at sales price first. So just let's isolate comp 1 and comp 2. You notice a pretty big difference in sale price, 530 to 455.9. The difference in price tells me that's the market's reaction to the different variances in features to this property.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular case, it is a big one was location, also lot size. I've kind of snipped this out just for the sake of this particular demonstration, just to focus on date of sale and time adjustments. But there could also be things like features like a swimming pool that we're pairing side by side. So essentially I'm saying, well, the difference between 530 and 456, that's 45, that's $75,000. What is the market looking at to justify that increase in price? And so part of that I was able to figure out is
So nice down here, but it's hot.
it's the reaction to the busy road. That's part of the big thing there. So comp number 2 was adjacent to a busy road, but it was offset a little bit by natural area, open space. That's what nous means. And so that's why.
Okay, that's gonna be huge.
Yep. So it had a little bit of buffer as opposed to the subject property and comp 1, which directly backed up to Union Hills.
I have a question regarding backing up to a busy road.
Yes.
So obviously the homes that are literally backed up to a busy road. Now, what about the house that's across the street from that one? Because you can still hear that.
Yeah. So based on my experience, generally speaking, they don't have the need for adjustment. Generally speaking, the market does not. They see that immediate adjacency as being the externality that they.
Right.
It's kind of the line in the sand. Everybody's just like.
We're going off the road, running into the.
For so many, think of all the reasons why that might be. Yep.
So if you've got
So,
the one backing to the road, it's the backyard where you're living in and living that's got the road noise. By the time you get to the other one, it's the
the other
front
way.
and the back facing the other way, so you don't lose quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of reasons that you can kind of think of. I have a question on Zoom. Go ahead.
so what about the house is backed up to a busy road? I mean, a big road, but it's not so busy. It's not as busy. Does
Yeah.
that matter?
It could, and that again, that's as an appraiser, my job is to identify that analyze it and question it, and then analyze if there's any price difference. So that's when I'm doing this paired sales analysis. I find a property that backs to the road, it sells for X, and then I'm finding a similar one that is interior and doesn't back to the road. That difference in sale price tells me whether or not there needs to be an adjustment. So you could be backing to a road that, again, like you mentioned, it doesn't have that much traffic noise. Maybe it's like an interior subdivision, kind of a arterial street that runs through the subdivision. And maybe buyers don't see that, even though it is more traffic, they don't see that as necessarily any externality that affects the livability of the house. And you do your paired sales, you look at the house that backs to that street and the ones that's interior. If you're not seeing much variance in price or no variance at all, that's probably a pretty good suggestion that you do not need to make that location adjustment. I would say though that and this is based on my personal experience and the analysis that I've done, probably any major arterial street is you're going to need to look at closely and do your own paired sales to see if that adjustment, or really what adjustments necessary, baseline road, here, we were next to Beardsley in the freeway or down by Bell or whatever it is. I would venture to probably say, 999 times out of 1,000, that's probably going to require an adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And about the lot size, sometimes I see a property is maybe 1,000 square feet
Yes.
in lot size. Do you adjust for that?
I will definitely look at it. However, I would say that's probably one of those thresholds where if it's 1,000 square feet or less, probably not much difference. When it exceeds that, I tend to see support for adjustments more frequently. Yeah.
Especially like going from like under a quarter of an acre and now you're over a quarter of an acre.
Great.
So
Yes.
that's going to be a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting that difference. So if you're talking like maybe a pocket house that's sitting on a 3,000 square foot lot, and then you have a 4,300 square foot lot, that's probably going to be a big difference because space is at a premium for those small units, right? But yeah, if you're looking at an acre and a quarter versus an acre and a half,
You're not going to know.
probably not going to see a need for an adjustment at that point. It's going to have to be bigger. So keep in mind, again, just to reiterate, my role as an appraiser is to kind of step in the shoes of the typical buyer. So how am I going to react to this? I would, with specific addressing this particular question with regard to lot size, I would say the smaller the lot, the more reaction you're going to see to even small changes in lot size, but the bigger the lot, you're probably going to see less reaction to lot size.
So how much do you give if the lot size has doubled or 8,000 square feet lot size compared to an acre? Do you give like 30% of the livable square feet price?
Oh, that is a very good question. So did I understand that correctly? If we're looking at, say, like an acre lot versus a lot with 8,000 square feet, is that right? Okay. So first of all, if I can, I'm probably not trying to make that comparison. The utility of the property is very different. The market probably for those two types of properties isn't the same. You don't have, so let's assume the acre property is maybe like zoned for horses. The 8,000, the house that's zoned R18, different market. So try to avoid that big of a adjustment if you can. I understand if you have to. I mean, I've run into that personally. I have, where I have tried to make that adjustment. But again, the adjustment for lot size is always going to be market specific. So in this particular appraisal right here, you can see that I made some pretty big adjustments for lot size, even, with, about 2,000 square feet, but I was able to support it. I had another, it's not shown in this particular example, but I believe comp 4 had a similar lot size. And again, that house had sold for so much more than the other comparable properties that were just a few thousand square feet smaller in terms of lot, that I could support that. And all the adjustments kind of fell in line. So it will require you to kind of do some analysis. Just as a guiding principle, though, I would say, as the lot sizes get bigger, the variance and what the market actually recognizes as a significant difference is going to go down the larger you get, and it's probably going to go up the smaller the lot gets.
Especially when it's multi-acreage.
Yeah,
I have found.
Yes.
So like when you're like 1.5 plus and to a 3 acre and et cetera, what you're saying, I've seen that many times.
yeah.
Okay, so.
Chrissy.
Oh, I'm sorry, real quick though. Can they hear us when we're giving a
Yeah, is
question?
everybody else getting the interaction from the, Rachel says yes. Okay,
Okay.
good.
So this is gonna be maybe a little weird, but it's things we deal with occasionally and we're trying to adjust perception, if you will.
Yeah.
Perception is always interesting.
Mhm.
Do you have adjustments for things such as sewer versus septic, or because they're connected to a system, it's fine? Same thing with like county island versus city, like
Great
there's
question.
a perception when
Totally.
the buyer's buying, but I don't
Mhm.
necessarily see that it affects value, but I don't know how you guys perceive that.
Yeah, I definitely try to be aware of that sort of thing. And again, I'm looking at the comp, so I'm gonna pick two properties that are similar that have, and try and isolate that variance.
Right.
So if I'm on a county island and you're jumping, on a dirt road and you jump over to,
Mhm.
in the city, that's even in just relative close proximity, think of like Cave
Walk away.
Creek
Yeah.
or something like that, right?
Like a block away.
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
block away that's kind of within the
Mhm.
city. I'm gonna pair those next to each other and try and isolate that feature and look for difference in sale price. And so it would. Oh, are we okay?
You need room.
All right. So I don't know. Got some scary stuff going on here. All right.
We're okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's worthy to be conscious of
Yeah.
and kind of try and do your own investigation,
Sure.
well versus sewer, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Mhm.
If you're out in like, I haven't done an appraisal out in Rio Verde in a while,
Uh-huh.
but with the water issues that they're having up there,
Oh.
how is that impacting the market? I have, but that's something that I have to be aware of and understand, if I'm in Rio Verde, I don't want to be getting into Scottsdale
Right.
Scottsdale proper in order to pull comps because it's going to skew my numbers. So I really want to kind of hone in on a neighborhood that has characteristics that are the same. Even some of these problems that these communities are facing, we want to make sure that all the comps that we're picking have the same issues. Good questions.
Now, Rio Verde is that area that they haul water.
Yes.
Right now. Oh. Okay, so one more question. When
Yes.
I'm assuming you are also using MLS and probably tax records like
Yes.
we do to pull the information.
Yep.
So you're looking at a variety of different sales. What do you weight most heavily, or do you have 3 or 4 things that you weight together before you start making exceptions? So as far as like square footage versus age versus location, like you've
Great.
got all these things you're trying to balance for similarity, but
Yeah.
what do you give heavier weight to?
Very good question. I'm glad you brought this one up. So the appraisal form kind of does a nice job in terms of ranking these different types of things.
Mhm.
So this is not a coincidence. You'll see that right here on the page 2 of the sales comparison that we have listed. Now, in real estate, what do we always say the 3 most important words are?
Location.
Yes, location. So yes, that's going to be very high on my list. But notice what it has above location.
Date and time of sale.
Date and time of sale. So in other words, you could have the same property in that location, but if it's sold at a different time in the market, how does that affect price? It's huge, right?
Mhm.
It's more significant than even location. And location is important. But the way that the sales comparison is organized is generally speaking how we should be looking at the market in terms of ranking what the market sees as significant. So yes, location is really high on my list, but we also want to give consideration to when it's sold. When a property, if we were doing real estate in 2005 and then we were selling the same house in 2009, you missed the market, you timed it totally wrong, right? Like it was a big difference. And it has that, you might be dealing with the same property, same location, but timing in the market ruled at that point. Yeah.
So in this case, if that's the way it works, the actual lot size and condition and age are more important than the GLA. And we,
Could be.
as agents, often, I think, take a comparison of, we want properties within 10 or 20% square footage as our first
Right?
kind of line of defense. So we're I'll
Doing
say,
it backwards.
attacking it from a totally different, yeah.
Could be. Yeah, could be. Although I like the parameters that you set for your GLA range is
Mhm.
probably acceptable for our market, 10 or 20%, probably 20 on the high end. If you can trim it down and get better sales, even smaller and closer to your subject, I would totally agree with that. Absolutely. So this, take it as the appraisal form and the way that the features are listed on the left side of the sales comparison chart, kind of just as a basic guideline. Just in general, I would definitely, I am almost 100% in agreement that date of sale and location are probably the top two primary factors.
Yeah.
And there can be some switching there in terms of whether or not the market sees, livable area as more important than lot size. But boy, I really hone in very hard on when it's sold and where the property is located.
Can we drop to condition, or is that later?
Yeah, condition is down here.
So I have a question. On
Yes.
These three, they're all the same, C3.
Yes.
Or all four, actually, even your property, that you're, doing the appraisal on. What does C3 mean?
Great question. Very good. Okay.
Or
It's
C2?
appraisal speak.
Yeah, it is. So another piece of the appraisal report that you want to get familiar with. So a few years ago, Fannie Mae put out the UAD,
Mhm.
the Uniform Appraisal Data Set. And the reason why they did this is they were getting very subjective terminology with regard to reporting of the subject property's condition and the comparables. You're
Okay.
getting terms like average. Well, what does average really mean?
Right.
Good, better, what,
Subjective.
very subjective. So that Fannie Mae said, we need something a little more standardized. So they put out this, the Uniform Appraisal Data Set, and particularly these codes with regard to quality of construction.
Mhm.
And then you see below that condition. So quality of construction, Q4, and then condition C3. So Q for quality, C for condition.
Okay.
And this is on a scale of 1 to 6.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So
So,
what's the high, like
so 1 being the highest.
superior?
Yep. 6 being the bottom. 6, if you see,
Oh.
if you see 5s and 6s in the appraisal report, this loan is not going to close.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this
Okay.
this house has some problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're
That's like foundational roof type stuff. usually.
structural,
Yeah,
can't,
got it.
like, yeah, so a C5 is, C5 is got some major structure. It's livable, but
Sure.
got some major problems. 6 is like, this house needs to be demolished.
Okay, that's why I've never seen those.
Yeah.
I've never seen a 1, well, maybe on new construction. But
Yes.
I typically see 2, 3s and 4s.
Yes.
For new construction,
Yeah.
is it has
Yep.
to be a one to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 is reserved for totally new. Yep. C2, so an example of a C2 is in terms of condition. Let's say you're in Arcadia and they've torn everything down except for one wall and rebuilt the whole house. It's not new, but it's a C2.
Got it.
Yep. So
Okay.
it's virtually everything in the house looks and feels like new, but it's not, because the existing structure or the original structure was, 1955 or something like that.
So C3 is probably, and C4 are the most common ones that we're going, that I feel like that's what I
Yes.
see
Yes.
most.
So C4 and if Christy, if you send me a reminder, I can send the attachments out to everybody so that you have this sheet. The definitions are typically in every appraisal, but if you want your own copy of the definitions so that you can work with it on your own, I can send that out to everybody. so that you have that just for your own reference. So you can see what Fannie Mae says the difference are between these different qualities of build, and then also the different stages of condition. Just for the sake of our conversation here, C4, if it's a, C4, if it's a 1975 house, ranch style house, maybe Hallcraft or something like that here locally. And it's in good shape, but not updated at all, probably a C4. If it's, kind of depending on how the market reacts now, maybe it was updated in the late 90s. You're probably running the edge of C3 to C4. And so it's
3.5.
yeah, it's been updated, but the market sees it as still outdated.
Right.
So C3 and C4, it's a judgment call in a lot of cases. If
Okay.
you're looking at a completely updated house, that's a solid C3. Now, again, like I said, if you're looking at the tear down house, that's an actual remodel where virtually everything in the house is like new, that's the C2 territory.
There's a question online.
Yes.
How much does the type of construction matter? Block versus wood versus frame versus 3D?
Yeah, very good question. So you can probably imagine this where there are, for instance, where condition rating, you might have a Q4 construction block house and a Q4 construction, 2x4 wood frame house. It's really, are they of the same level? And then you might also want to be looking at your comps, doing that paired sales analysis again to see, does the market distinguish a difference in quality between block versus wood frame, those types of things. Obviously, even with wood frame construction, you can still have very high end finishes and ornate detail and custom and those types of things.
And insulation.
Yeah, insulation, totally. So you're looking at it not just with regard to sole materials like block versus wood frame. You're looking at it all in all, the roof, the windows, just the overall build quality and stuff like that. Those the pages that I'll send you with regard to these definitions and in difference in quality will go a long ways in helping you kind of make those determinations on your own. But it is worthy of consideration when you're looking at difference in construction quality. Like, is that something that if the market sees it and demonstrates a willingness to pay more, then yes, as an appraiser, I need to be giving it consideration and making adjustments for it. Very good question. Yeah. Any other online questions there?
I haven't seen.
Okay. Good. And then any other, just even outside of this presentation, any general appraisal questions that I can answer for you before we wrap up?
I have a question kind of along the lines of what you guys were just talking about. And I know this varies in area and obviously what is being constructed, but a pool, for example, before I used to say like, okay, 40 grand you could adjust for. Now a pool to build is like 80 grand for a base pool. So where do you kind of pull numbers, or do you just do like a general average of what you think it could cost based off of what you're seeing is there a guideline you guys use for that? Yeah,
so there's a few ways that I would recommend, easy methods that you can use as agents to derive maybe a pool adjustment. I would always lean first towards the comparison approach. So again, my observation has probably been very similar to what you folks are also experiencing, especially, after COVID. We saw even the value of pools on a comparison basis went way up. It became a higher priority for people. They were willing to invest more to have a pool just because of the way that people were using homes changed so much. So I have observed that as well. I am making the types of pool adjustments I was making 5 years ago it's much higher now.
Yeah.
And it's because I can see it in the market, how the typical buyer reacts to a swimming pool and how they're willing to pay more for it. So I would always look to the comparison method first, because that's a market extracted adjustment. If you're having problems though, with doing a comparison of properties in the neighborhood with pools, I would use this as a secondary method. And so we can also, in our appraisals, use as a support for adjustments, the cost approach to value. Probably not often looked at enough, but really effective and relatively simple with regard to extracting an appropriate adjustment. So as Rachel had mentioned, base price for a very basic pool these days, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, right? So basic concept that we want to keep in mind is cost minus depreciation equals value. So if we know that the replacement cost of this particular pool today would be, let's say, $60,000, kind of low end, right? But basic pool was $60,000. Then we can deduct depreciation to figure out possibly what market reaction would be today. So let's just say, for easy sake of example, let's say this house that we're comping out in our neighborhood that maybe is our listing that we're trying to figure out what the pool is worth. Let's say this pool has probably lived half of its economic life. Well, that's how we figure out depreciation. So we would apply that 50% or half life to the cost to replace. 60,000 minus the 50% depreciation leaves us now with a pool that's worth about 30,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you adjust if they've refinished it, right?
Right. So that would kind of affect it would have an impact on its level of depreciation. So we could say, yes, let's just say, for instance, a pool from build to its end of life is like 30 years. Let's just say that the pool itself is 15 years old. So we're right in at maybe like 15 years depreciation, but they've refinished it. They've kept it very well maintained. Maybe that drops the effective age of the pool down to 10 years. Well, so we can adjust our depreciation accordingly based on an effective age.
Okay.
So you might want to, if you have some pool builders that you can get some reliable numbers from, just very basic, get an idea of what the effective age of a pool is, what cost of replacement is, and then say, hey, what would you say its effective age is now? They've done this, this, and this. They can probably say, yeah, it's a little less than half or a little more, or whatever. They can give you some good insight with regard to how to do this cost approach to coming up with an adjustment.
So I'm also curious on the pool idea, because I've had clients ask, well, should we put a pool in our home to make it more attractive for people to purchase?
Yes.
And then they're going to dump 60, 70, 80,000.
Yes.
What is the percentage that an appraiser will give them back? If it's brand new?
Right. Good. Very good question. So probably much like a car or
That's what I was thinking.
asset that you buy,
Yeah.
or not, it's not even an asset, right? Like as soon as you drive it off the lot, it's depreciated.
Mhm.
So the moment that it gets used, it's no longer brand new.
Right.
So some guiding principles that I think is really important with regard to any feature of the house, but specifically with regard to pools, is I think a very good starting point is to look at the predominance of number of pools in a particular neighborhood. So when you pull the monsoon sheet, it's pretty handy because in the subdivision statistics, it will tell you the percentage of households that have pools.
Yeah.
The higher the percentage of homes that have pools, the more value that pool has in a given neighborhood. So as an example, if you were to pull the monsoon on a swimming pool house in Sun City, how many percentage wise? Oh, I'll give you an even better one. I'm working on this right now. This is an appraisal I have. Manufactured house with 6 acres in Tonopah and has a swimming pool.
Oh my God.
Oh, boy, get out of here.
Not joking.
Goodness gracious.
Imagine what the market reaction is to a swimming pool. Do the market participants in Tonopah demand a swimming pool?
No.
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, it might even be seen as it's possible.
That's the only house you're gonna get.
Right.
So what did you do?
I haven't finished it yet. This just happened.
You want our help?
Yeah. I'm gonna recommend this listing to one of you guys today. You're gonna get it. One of you guys is gonna get it. Yeah. Yes.
Well, you tell us the value first.
Yeah, right. What's their pool worth? I can't tell them it's negative 5,000, you know, right? So it's an extreme example, but it gives you some insight into what a particular feature is worth. If the market in Tonopah demanded manufactured homes with swimming pools, they would build them, but they don't, because that market doesn't want a pool.
I've never had a client ask for that in a property.
Right.
Ever.
So think of, but in Paradise Valley,
Yeah.
a house with a swimming, it's a must.
Yeah.
Right.
The house that doesn't have the swimming pool is defective in the eyes of a potential buyer.
Right.
They want to see that pool. So
Good point.
yeah, how we handle this as appraisers. Yeah, just think about, again, put yourself in the position of a potential buyer. Do they really want this item? If they do, you would see, remember, supply rises to meet demand.
Right.
If people wanted pools in this neighborhood, they would build them.
Right.
If there's only 15% of households in a neighborhood that have pools, there's not a lot of demand for it.
The hard part is that. well,
Talking
it's
to
not
your-
even an anomaly client, but it's the client that's
Yeah.
got champagne tastes on a beer budget, and so they have to have a pool, but they can only be in a $300,000 neighborhood where nobody has pools.
Yeah.
Because it's not affordable in that,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yep.
And
Well,
then they're
usually that-
paying a huge premium to be the only house with that feature,
Yeah,
and, and they don't recognize that they're overpaying for a feature.
Gosh, this has been so good.
yeah, good.
I have so many questions.
Fire away. If we have time, okay, Christy? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna talk really quick. First, I have 4 questions. So first one is, do you only compare single level homes to single level homes and 2-level homes to 2-level homes?
Very, very good question. I like that a lot. And the quick answer is yes. I really try to narrow those down together, just because, and let me know if you see something different or if you agree. But generally speaking, there is some sort of difference between single level versus 2-story. So in other words, if you have a 2,000 square foot 2-story house versus the 2,000 square foot single story, there's the pricing is different. There's, even cost to build, it's less expensive to build the 2-story house that has a footprint using less concrete.
Right.
Totally. So it's much cheaper to build that 2-story house than the ranch story of the same size. And then also think particular to our geographic market, how people react to a 2-story house. How is it heated and cooled? Is it as efficient as a single story? It's tougher. You walk upstairs, you can feel the difference in temperature. So it's harder to keep that more efficiently heated and cooled. Then think too, how you're further limiting your market with a 2-story house. Is this going to be the house of choice for an elderly population that needs to climb up and down stairs? Probably not. So you do need to factor that in. And yes, I would probably place a lot of emphasis if I'm pulling comps on using single story versus single story, 2-story to 2-story, basement house to basement house, etc. The stairs can make a big difference, just that alone. Yeah.
So if you cannot find comps that's the same levels, how much, what's the percentage do you put as adjustments?
So I would do, so you see if we're looking at the comparison grid here, you notice, or I'll go back because it's a little easier to look at. Give me just a second. So looking at, do you see the line item here, design/style?
Mhm.
So again, we're using the UAD code here. DT stands for detached. The 1 means the number of stories. So these are all single story houses. So
Facing the same way,
facing the same way.
right? Are they southwest facing?
Oh, no, southwest being the style.
Oh,
Just,
oh,
yep.
oh.
So southwest architecture.
Oh, okay,
Yep. So tile roof, stucco,
perfect.
etc. Yep. So looking at, if we were to do this side by side, what we would want to do to figure out if an adjustment is necessary for single story versus 2-story. In this particular example, we would have one comp that is single story. And then the second comp, let's pretend comp number 2 was 2-story, then we would want to isolate that feature and look at the difference in sale price to extract an appropriate adjustment.
But I rarely ever see that in an appraisal. Like,
Yeah.
it's usually they're pulling 2
It's-
stories to 2-story.
Yeah,
they're
it's
pulling 1 story.
in our market, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
You just overall are not, there's enough sales that you're probably not going to run into that too often.
Yeah, right.
If you are having problems, my suggestion is to expand your search parameters.
Okay.
So let's just say, for instance, you have a rare single-story house in a neighbor or a subdivision that's dominated by 2 stories.
Mhm.
2 ways to expand your search. You can go back further in time, or you can expand your search in radius. So if you're looking at, you would want to be looking for competing subdivisions that would have a similar product, maybe similar age, maybe it's the same builder, maybe you're comparing Pulte to Pulte, or Pulte of a particular quality that has a, maybe similar to a Mark Taylor or whatever, compare builders and price levels and use that. I would look to that first, rather than just getting so laser focused on the subdivision. And again, you do want to start kind of in close proximity as a general guideline, but as you need to expand out.
And you did that. You went almost 2 miles.
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Is 2 miles like usually the cutoff?
Fannie Mae used to be really particular about 1 mile radius and that sort of thing. They've loosened up a lot on that, which is great because you know better than anyone, your buyers are looking at a pretty large geographic area.
Yeah. Mhm.
The
Especially here.
yeah, so rather than,
Spread out.
I appreciate this because Fannie Mae said, we're not going to get hung up on the 1 mile guideline anymore. And the question then becomes, it's all about substitution. We talked about now, from a buyer perspective, is that subdivision a suitable substitute for the subject
Right.
location? Are these 2 subdivisions competing with one another for buyers? Yeah. So are they similar in age? Are they similar in quality? Are they similar in design? Relatively, do they have some locational factors that are the same? Maybe they're in the same school district, maybe the same zip code, whatever it may be. There should be some neighborhood characteristics that have commonality there. Yeah, good question.
Second question, do you make adjustments for covered patio or gazebo? If when you are comparing a house, one house doesn't have a covered patio or a gazebo.
Yes. So probably, I would say if you're finding that there's a market reaction that's probably in excess of maybe like 2 or 3% for that patio, I would probably say there's reason for adjustment. But, on a, let's say a $500,000 house, less than 1% adjustment, is that really significant? I don't know. It's tough to get that granular on a feature that, more than likely doesn't carry all that much weight. Although I would say if every house, again, this goes back to that percentage of houses in the area. If everybody has a covered patio and your property that you're looking at doesn't, then yes, there probably is a need to adjust for that because because in that particular scenario, that house does not compare well to other homes. So it would be a negative if it didn't have what everybody else has. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard people saying that they are getting low appraisals like this year quite often.
Yeah.
Are appraisers all being very reserved in this year or intentionally to be reserved?
That's a really good question. And I'm not sure exactly what the answer to that would be. Although the whole reason that I put this presentation together today is something I suspect might be an issue, a particular issue that you could be facing with regard to an appraisal gap. Is the appraiser correctly analyzing the trends in the market? If they're not, if they're only looking in that rearview mirror from a 12-month snapshot, they're going to see a decline in prices, which could cause this appraisal gap problem. So again, that was the whole reason why I suspect could be a significant reason why some appraisal gap issues could be happening today. It's something that you can look for. So I don't necessarily think it's because an appraiser is trying to be conservative. I think it's just a narrow view of the market that is leading them to the wrong conclusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think we were talking about it at the outset or even right before this presentation started. This is wild. Like when we're looking at how prices have shifted over the last 12 months, how do you this is a daily struggle for me as an appraiser. You folks, when you're listing homes, how do you price this appropriately? You're kind of using your spidey senses and what going on and all that stuff. It is really challenging. And when market conditions are challenging, then appraisals are going to be challenging. Yes.
Well, and it's so weird because we know that prices have gone up for the last 3 months.
Yes.
So we want to price to where the market's going.
Yes.
And yet most of the market's uninformed of that. And they
Yes.
still think we're crashing and that they're going to get a deal and they'll just wait 30 days and then offer a lower price.
Totally.
It's like, where are you living? And
Yeah.
it's very strange.
Yeah, they've got YouTubers spelling doom and gloom and telling them, and like it's completely infiltrating their, what they perceive in the market, but they're not in line with what the big picture is. And, that's who they view as an informed source. But yeah, so I completely understand, we're all in one way or another trying to deal with what the latest trends are, how that's impacting prices. It is very difficult. This is way more difficult than when prices were going up 3% per month in 2020 and 2021. Because we could just, as an appraiser, I could almost tack that on to every comp. And it's like, yep, we're still going up, and honestly, it wasn't that hard to prove. Now it's like, yeah, I got this comp that sold 8 months ago. Prices are lower today than they were then. So how do I properly calculate for the change? But I've got comps that are, 2 or 3 months old that are better today. The market's gone up. So you have these really wonky looking adjustments where think of how an underwriter might be looking at the appraisal. They're like, wait, they're making negative adjustments on that old sale, but positive ones. Why are that? To them, that might scream inconsistency until they really read the report and understand why that's happening.
And even in the last 12 months,
Yeah.
there have still been those unicorn properties that got 3-4 offers and it went over asking.
Yes.
Where there's still, so I've seen that too, where it's
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, how do you gauge that one property for whatever reason became a unicorn?
Yeah.
But the others in the neighborhood weren't.
Yep.
They stayed on the market 120 days
Yep.
even.
Yep.
So it's
Okay.
really hard.
Yes.
One more question.
Yes.
Then we'll, figure out how to wrap up.
Yeah.
So the goal of the appraisal is to determine the property value.
Yes.
I feel like so often, having done this for many years, that it seems like it's more about how to substantiate a contract.
Mm.
Because
Right.
more than 90% of them, in my estimation, come in at the contract price, which tells me it's not an actual property value. If it came in $538 more, I would be like, okay, they actually appraised a value.
Right.
So
Mhm.
tell me the mindset for you guys on why the appraisals so often come in exactly at what a buyer and seller agreed to, which
Yes.
doesn't necessarily to me indicate the value of the home. It may
Yeah.
indicate the seller's motivated, it may indicate the buyer's more motivated, but
Mhm.
their agreement on a contract isn't necessarily the home value
Very,
for many reasons.
yes. Very good question. Sounds like the fix is in, right? Right?
It's just weird.
Yes. Very good question. I have an answer for you though.
Okay.
All right. So, the appraisal has come in right on the dot, right on the purchase price.
Yeah.
So here's kind of an analogy of the way I like to think of the appraiser's role. Imagine an appraiser, or not an appraiser, but we watch maybe like a crime show. We see a murder investigator. They've arrived on the scene.
I can feel that way sometimes.
The crime has taken place.
Yeah.
There's a dead person on the floor with a knife in the chest, right? Yeah. Case closed, murder, and they know exactly who did it, right? Well, that murder still has to be investigated.
Sure.
Okay. So I look at the appraiser's job as very much similar. We have arrived on the scene after the crime has taken place. AKA the purchase price or the meeting of the minds of buyer and seller.
Right.
Okay, so very important thing for you to keep in mind. The purchase contract is a valid piece of market data that the appraiser is required to analyze.
I thought so.
Okay,
But I
so-
heard someone say no.
Yeah.
But
so number one, keep that in mind. Per USPAP, which is the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, mandates that I have to request a copy of the contract, and if it's made available to me, I have to analyze it. So I have to know what the terms of that contract are. I need to know concessions, et cetera. et cetera.
you see stuff like that. See,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
So
I take that.
I am given the contract up front. The question now becomes, how does that impact the appraised value? Does that bias me in any sort of way with regard to what the final opinion of
Right.
value is going to be? So I take that contract. I do know upfront what the purchase price is. I do recommend that if you are interfacing with an appraiser and you're giving them a copy of the purchase agreement, that they have complete knowledge of what the final purchase price is. So let us know, give us the complete contract with all of the counteroffers and addendums, et cetera. Very important. But again, we keep in mind, the contract is a valid piece of market data that is a demonstration of a willing buyer and a willing seller. Okay, so I cannot rely on that alone. I also have to do my investigation. I have to pull comparables in the area to make sure that the contract, does it exceed? Is it in line? Is it below?
Sure.
Whatever. I also have to know the circumstances surrounding this particular sale. Is it an arm's length transaction, or is it Uncle Joe selling to his nephew Aaron? You know, and it's a family deal,
Right.
because that can impact price. If it's not arm's length, then the contract kind of becomes irrelevant.
Mhm.
It's,
Okay,
you
sure.
know, so I need to know, is this arm's length? Is it non-arm's length? Let's assume though, in this scenario, it's arm's length. So, using, just kind of very basic numbers here. Let's say the contract price is $553. I have comparables in the area between $549 and $567. I've kind of adjusted those out, and that's the range, right? So my task at this point is the lender has come to me and they said, we want a single point value. We want to know your opinion of value, but we want it at a single point. So in other words, I can't express an appraisal. This is a condition of the assignment. I can't say it's worth somewhere between 549 and 567.
Mhm.
I also have to keep in mind now, I'm asked to put a single point value on it. I also have to keep in mind the definition of market value. The definition of market value is the most probable price that a property would retrieve on the open market, given a willing buyer and a willing seller, both acting in their best interests, right? So that's how we've met in the middle, right? Okay, so I have established a range of value of 549 to 567. I have a contract that is arm's length that demonstrates a willing buyer and willing seller have agreed at 553. What is the most probable price of this property?
Mhm. Okay.
I got a contract that proves it.
Yeah.
So if I was to appraise it at 566, I'm not wrong. I'm in the range of what's acceptable.
Right.
But what is most probable? Well, I've got a contract here that says exactly what it is.
Sure.
That's why you see appraisals come in at purchase price so often.
Gotcha.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a controversy or not, but can I say a particular brand name with this class? Because you are recording it.
We would prefer not.
Okay, so there's a company in the valley.
Yeah.
Investment company.
Yeah.
That's not just this valley, it's the Southwest,
Okay.
California, New Mexico, Texas, etc.
Gotcha.
They had purchased thousands and thousands of properties in the valley.
Mhm.
Then last fall, they had a lawsuit of $63 million
Yeah.
and needed to liquidate properties to pay that lawsuit.
Yes.
Because of that, there was one time, I believe it was December, January, in that bracket timeframe, out of 13,000 homes on the market in the valley,
Yes.
this one company had 1,001 homes.
Wow.
And because of that, they kept dropping the price
Yep.
because they had to liquidate these super fast because of their lawsuit.
Yes.
Do appraisers take that in consideration, or do they even know that?
Great question. So yeah, that's a key point, is whether or not the appraiser knows that, because on paper, in black and white, that may look like that's a comp, like,
Exactly.
let's go. Like, this is clearly out of, this is way under the purchase price. This is what the market says. So this is where your interaction with the appraiser at the listing is appropriate, so that you can highlight comparables that you used in developing the list price and what you think is supportive of your price. And then also include in that possibly what are non-arm's length transactions. Essentially, they are distressed sales. If they have to liquidate, they're being forced to sell. That goes against a willing buyer, willing seller concept, which automatically precludes it from being included in consideration for market value.
There is no other company, there's no other person in the valley right now with the amount of listings that this one company has, even today.
Wow.
On our market right now.
Gotcha.
They still have hundreds of them on the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
And so to me, that makes me angry. I get fired up because
Yeah.
I'm like, how did that even happen?
Yeah.
How could we even
Right.
allow that?
Yeah.
But that is, I'm going to take that in consideration then, meeting with the appraisers at certain properties.
I would. It's probably base level in terms of just what I would recommend in terms of the interaction that you have with any appraiser is, especially nowadays that we're not as busy as we were a couple years ago. Meet them at the property with all of this information in hand, so that you can have a conversation with the appraiser. It'll give you an opportunity also to vet the appraiser and their experience and their knowledge of the market area. It's not the time for an interrogation, but just a little bit of, a friendly conversation. Let them know, hey, I just thought you might find this helpful. I know this particular comp might look on its face like it's good, but let me explain to you why we didn't give this consideration.
I like that.
Yeah, so determining whether or not a property is arm's length or not. So arm's length in this particular scenario would have to do with the circumstances surrounding the sale. Was there forced selling in this case? So the circumstances of the seller is, they just need to dump. They're not acting in their own best interest at this point. They're just, it's not, doesn't qualify. So yeah, feel free to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer whatever you have. I appreciate all the good questions today.
Perfect. All right, thanks guys for showing up and making this a great time. We will get the recording out to those who missed it. And if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to either me or Aaron directly, and we'll get answers to you. And then when he sends me those documents, I'll get those mailed out.